Rock
Yeah.
it.
Hopefully it will be fine. Again, you're officially my first virtual guest. I'm
Hey,
very, I'm very happy to
honored.
have you. Honestly,
Thank you.
I've been discussing obviously this with you for quite a while since I've been planning to do that. So
Yeah,
it just makes sense, I guess, to start it all with you.
absolutely it does. I love that you had it. This has been an idea of yours that's been bubbling for a while, and you took the
Mhm.
initiative and went for it.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm very excited. I already had a first sort of interview with Five Finger Death Punch, and it went so well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to start this virtual thing with you. And I'm only kind of sad that people couldn't are not able to hear our previous conversations, because as pretentious as this might sound, I feel that they every time we talk, there's so much meaning and
I agree.
in decent content that we've been talking about and discussing. And I just hope that people would feel the synergy in the dialogue that we usually have, because for me it's so rare to just encounter this with other people, if you know what I mean.
But I think, yeah, two things. I think those things are that they can't be contrived. You
Mhm.
can't fake something like that.
Yeah.
And I think when it happens because there are two people who are connecting in spirit without any ego, and
Mhm.
if you make yourself, if you're comfortable getting uncomfortable and being vulnerable, then
Mhm.
you'll sort of bear the fruits of that if someone else is willing to do the same.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I don't know if it's the same with you too, but for me, I'm definitely able to connect with multiple different personalities in a different way.
Yeah,
But to be able to be my true self, the my full personality in front of someone else is such a very rare thing.
yeah.
So it's so satisfying, I guess, to just be able to get to this level of communication with someone else. As I'm feeling that with you, obviously, from the few conversations that we had before. So
I, that's a good no. That's a good point. I mean, I think that's probably everybody's objective as they go through life in whatever relationships they form. Right? It's
mhm.
just to be able to just be yourself because it's liberating. It's like being your free spirit. And anytime there's inhibitions, it just mitigates. It feels like you know it's just such a jumpy thing, and then you're sort of on alert, and then you start to go, your focus starts to drift to the back of your mind. It's like more you're observing, and then you're sort of determining how to behave, like everything's going through filters, and that's no good.
Yeah, isn't it funny how you know people minds put limitations on our personalities when we're put into this sort of different situation? It's so rare to encounter this feeling where you're just being yourself without overthinking or without complying with different norms and whatever the
Yeah,
case might be.
totally. Formalities. I've always been adverse to formality.
Yeah.
Any sort of structure, I'm like, yeah, I deviate from that.
Yeah. Are you able to, freely reach this level of connection with many people, or is it something that you rarely encounter as well?
I think I've been very fortunate in that sense that I've certainly gone through phases of my life where it's been very difficult to do that. Certainly as you're growing up and learning about yourself along with experiencing others and other people. Um, but I guess I sort of learned long ago
Mhm.
there's no point in being any other way.
Yeah.
So if you just go out there, put yourself out there as you are, you never have to look over your shoulder. You never have to keep any story straight or anything like that.
Yeah.
And people take it or leave it.
Yeah. It's so well said. It's, and you're completely right. And it seems like you have such a you know, a mature and objective assessment of who you are and, you know, what sort of quality in terms of connecting with other people you want to achieve. Have you always been like that? Is this like your natural perception of human interaction, or is it something that you've developed throughout the years and throughout your experiences?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Sort of as you were asking it, I was thinking about it because I kind of sensed where you were going. Um,
Yeah.
I think one remarkable advantage that I've had in my life is having a twin brother,
Yeah.
Nathan.
Yeah.
I mean, we couldn't possibly be any closer. It's, imagine having someone there from -9 months old going through every experience with you. So you not only get to, you know, ex- have somebody that you can reflect it, post experience, you can reflect on the conversation or the circumstance. You can reflect and have a conversation, an analytical conversation with. You can also observe that person going through the same situations that you are. So it's sort of like, an accelerated learning curve.
Yeah.
So when we were in high school, we had a funny year where all of our friends turned on us, like a typical high school thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was like, the Leones were toxic for, it's like you couldn't be friends with us for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I think it the character that you just defined uh, probably emerged from that, because when it's sort of like when you hit the sort of bottom, or when you have nothing else to lose,
Yeah.
and you get to a point, it's sort of like it cracks your spirit, and
Hmm.
then you feel exposed, and like, well, now I'm exposed, so everybody knows who or what I am, because I'm at your rawest and your most vulnerable.
Yeah.
So you just sort of go forge ahead with that, and then having a twin to sort of galvanize that reemergence was incredible.
Wow. It's very funny because honestly, this was the next topic that I really wanted to discuss with you, and I find it really interesting in terms of, your early years and, in general, what it's why having a twin brother,
Yeah,
uh, because from every perspective, this connection is something really special. I assume, you know.
yeah. So what did you say? Which word? Just
It's really special, this connection that you have
the
with,
connection. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. um so, how would you describe it? Because I've always been very fascinated just in the idea of having two human beings connected in such a strong way, with such a strong bond.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. I mean, when I um when I had an incident a few years back, when I was injured and I was in
Hmm.
a coma,
Hmm.
and the prognosis from the surgeons and the brain guys was, it wasn't looking like I was going to emerge, like I was going to come back from that.
Oh, wow.
A very interesting thing happened there. Nathan, he was very he was devastated, and he was in the waiting room
Hmm.
pacing back and forth while I was in surgery.
Hmm.
It was taking longer than they anticipated. So, they thought, it's arbitrary numbers. They thought it was going to be about a half an hour, the surgery, anyways.
Yeah.
And at about an hour, Nathan was getting really nervous, and he started pacing in the waiting room, and then he fainted.
Wow.
And it was the way that he fainted. It wasn't like in a sitcom where they just splash water on your face and like, oh yeah, come back.
Yeah.
Like he was out.
Wow.
So they got him on a gurney, and he was just completely exhausted. Curiously, what was simultaneously happening in the operating room, I flatlined.
Wow.
And so then I came back to life. And this is as the neurosurgeon the head of neurology at UIC, Dr. Sergei Nekrish, he told us that he was really surprised. There was no sort of medical explanation for how I came back to life. But his operating theory was that there was a transference of subatomic particles that I needed to survive.
Wow.
So I think that's probably the best real life example of how close twins can be.
Honestly, yeah. Honestly, it is. And thank you for sharing this story. Like, it's just, I think it encaptures I would say, I'm a very analytical person, very science-based, but I do believe that there's no better way to describe this than, just a magical occurrence.
Magic sort of gets a bad rep in a sort of scientific world, but science can only prove what we've discovered that we can connotate. But there's another element here.
I absolutely agree. And as a person who is very interested in science, I always find it even disrespectful to the nature of the universe to put a limit on things that it's such an egoistical way, because we are doing this sort of labeling, presuming that we know everything and that we understand anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're just guests, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And there's so many things out there that our consciousness is just not capable of perceiving, which is fine. We're just a tiny break in the universe. So,
yeah, man, that's part of the fun,
Exactly. So, you briefly touched on it, but I'm curious to hear, what was your childhood with your twin brother, and how did you, find your passion to music? Like, how this one developed in you?
So, I mean, childhood was it was amazing. I mean, we have 3 older sisters. A mom and dad who loved each other. It was a very loving home. We had a cabin, just a tiny little 1-bedroom cabin in Minnesota on a lake that we'd spend our summers in. Everyone just sleeping just wherever you could.
Yeah.
For the first 10 years, 8 or 9 years. We moved to a new house when we were 10. And it was like, my dad's business had been doing really well. So he wanted to move to this new neighborhood and build this big, crazy house. And we did that. And our mom was very simple. She liked she was a spiritual. She was an absolute angel. I mean, I couldn't come up with words to even describe how wonderful and beautiful this woman was. So she was like, she was the polarity of my dad. So, the balance, their parenting worked out really well, When we were 12, so we moved into this new house. She thought it was a little exuberant. We didn't really need all this stuff. She just wanted to see the sunset, She died in a car accident when we were 12. So that sort of, that introduced trauma and loss. And all those things that when you're that age, they're way too overwhelming for kids to deal with, especially back then when you don't have all of the psychological resources and the emotional resources that we do today. So that was what I think we would always credit to turning us towards the arts. When something like that happens, you suddenly see the world from a different perspective. Like you see it, when you go to school and you've got your friends there and your classmates, and you're all experiencing the same thing from the same perspective, then suddenly you're the one there without the mom. You're the one there who had this sort of tragic loss. and it just changes the way you view things, and you see the world in from a more creative perspective, you know,
Mhm.
a darker perspective perhaps, but also it shines light on the beautiful stuff. And um, so it was a confluence. To answer your question, getting into music was a confluence of that, and then the classic, having an older sister who loves Metallica. you know,
Yeah, sure.
so like we had all the Metallica records in our house by the time we were 9.
Yeah.
So yeah, our sister Paula, she was like the metal chick, like drove a
Yeah.
Mustang, and
Yeah.
and it was just so cool. Like she would take us to school, like her friends were we always looked up to them. They would have parties and they would do their bad stuff. And, Nathan and I and our friends were always just trying to like hitch onto that experience. So
Yeah.
music, then it illuminates the value of music, how it sort of timestamps, the wonderful moments in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Firstly, I need to say that I very much relate to everything that you've said, because I feel that we sort of have, similar developments in terms of our life experiences.
Yeah.
Because, I instantly connected with your story about growing up in a loving family with the words of balance between the father and the mother figure.
Yeah.
And I definitely relate with, experiencing that of a very close family member that just completely reshapes your perspective on life.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
completely changes you. And um it's, as I'm sure you know, it's something that it's very difficult to even put into words, I
Yeah.
guess. um
Absolutely.
but in terms of your introduction to music and in the concept of doing this, do you have like a specific memory where, when you've heard a specific song or a moment where you just, was your brain would explode and you would be like, wow, this is something completely out of any sort of explanations. I want to do that for a living, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Yeah, it would probably be um, Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
What was the name of that single? Fuck you, I won't do it. You tell me.
Oh, Jesus. What was the name?
What was that called?
Killing in the name of?
Killing in the Name of.
Killing in the name of, yeah.
That one was, oh my God. When that came out, there was just one of those wonderful summer nights where you're just driving around with your friends, you're sort of aimless,
Yeah.
and it just comes on and it just hits everybody at the same time. So, the car's like, there's 10 people in the car, and it,
Yeah.
for some reason, everyone's chattering, but for some reason, everyone's tuned into the song at this point, and it just gets louder and louder and louder.
Yeah.
And then, everyone's
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, that just, what a moment. Another one was Harvester of Sorrow from
Yeah.
Metallica. Listening to that on the way to school, we would pick up our best friend Tabucky. Like my sister Paula would drive us, and we'd pick him up. So you had, Paula and one of her friends in the front, and the three of us in the back, listening to Harvester of Sorrow. That was a
Wow.
beautiful moment.
Yeah, it does sound so. It does sound so. And then, like, what was the process from, just experiencing this sort of adrenaline rush that music gave you in these moments to deciding, okay, why don't we try doing this? Like, we want to be like these bands. We want to create the effect that they had on us, you know?
Do you know? Do you know the band Hum?
Yeah, I've heard of
Okay,
them.
they had a record out called "You'd Prefer an Astronaut,"
Yeah.
and there's a song on that record called "Stars."
Hmm.
Uh, and it's like at the time it was considered like it was like nerd rock, it was indie rock,
Yeah.
but this song had such a beautiful, like, single note picking melody
Mhm.
through the verse.
Mhm.
And then when the chorus came in, I mean, it just trounced, you know?
Yeah.
So Nathan and I went, and a few of our friends went to their concert at the Metro in Chicago.
Mhm.
Metro is a beautiful theater. I mean, it's my favorite venue in the world. It's like a 1,200 cap room, um, old Victorian building. And watching that band play, we were just totally blown away. So after the show, we were so amped up. You know, we drove all the way back to our house in the suburbs, you know, like 40 minutes away, and went down. We went down into our basement because my dad had some like old instruments that didn't even come out. I mean, we were so uninterested at that point, you know, or up until that point,
Yeah.
that we were like, oh my god, let's get everything out, you know,
Yeah.
get all the get all the gear out. No idea how to use it, um, and it was, you know, we had a lot of nights. We had the house to ourselves a lot of nights at that point. And I just remember like I kept getting shocked by the bass because it was
Yeah.
so old. It wasn't grounded, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, ah, shit. I was like, I don't know how the bassists do this, you know. But of course, it was just a total mess, and you know, we didn't make anything even close to music. But that was definitely the night that, you know, we discovered like, all right, man. I remember Nathan and I even looking at each other. We're like, we that's what we got to do next, you know.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember the moment where, um, and I'm describing this moment based on the many conversations that I had with different musicians and some moments that I've experienced myself. But you know, usually when you start playing any sort of an instrument or when you start just getting yourself involved in music, there's this moment where you are playing alongside someone else and things just click, and
Yes.
it's just, magic, from you
Yeah.
playing something, you just objectively assess that you've been creating a song.
I think it's incredible that you say that, because
Thank you.
as you were, I mean, before you even opened your mouth on that one, I was thinking about that, you know, that
Yeah.
moment from when we went back and pulled out all the broken gear and we didn't know how
Yeah.
to use it, to
Yeah.
when we finally got everything to work. And I'll never forget it.
Wow.
Nathan and I had this loft in the city of Chicago, in the uh, in River West. It was like the fishing district, really.
Hmm.
Um, it was totally, it wasn't residential. It wasn't
Hmm.
zoned for residential at all. I
Hmm.
got this guy, this shady dude who owned this shady old loft building, to let us rent it. And I mean, nobody would have dreamed of renting this place, you know, but of course we were all over it. It
Hmm.
was this huge 3,000 square foot loft.
Wow.
And we had an artist friend of ours from, Tyson Mead, from a band called the Chainsaw Kittens.
Hmm.
He came and painted like murals all over it. Like in the bathroom, he did the all four of the or all the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. It was like,
Yeah.
and then just this whole weird diagonal wall that we installed. My my bedroom was okay. So if you walk into the loft, my bedroom was a house on the
Hmm.
left, like with windows and a front door and everything, just to go into my little
Hmm.
house. You know,
Yeah.
Nathan's. You go upstairs. It was just weird. It was all built by artists. Like,
Wow.
it's crazy. Probably not the safest thing, but um, so we started a record label, and we built a stage in there, and we started doing shows, and then our band played there. And I'll never forget, the first time we got a band together. I mean, we could barely play our instruments. You know, I mean, rough. But there was a moment when, like you described, it all jived. I'll never forget it. And it was the I mean, I have goosebumps thinking about it. It was like,
Wow.
I it was a natural high, that eclipses any other high, artificial or otherwise,
Yeah.
that you can have. You're just, it's like you're caught up in the orbit of something. You know, it's like
Exactly.
you can let go, and
Yeah.
you just get sucked into this orbit, and it's just carrying you. You're float. It's incredible. Like, what a
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah. I mean, personally, you described it in a very similar way to how I feel it, because you know the way I describe it is like you're just. I guess it sounds very superficial, but it's just connecting with the universe.
Oh,
It's like
100%. Yeah.
it's just the moment everything that just is connecting, and you're just in the
That's it.
middle of it.
Yeah, that's totally it. And
Yeah,
so I think about that and I think, all right, like, how can you recreate that feel? I mean, that feels to me like the ultimate goal of a human, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's like you've got all the yogis and like the shamans, all that. They do all the meditating. It's like I think that's what they're going for, right? Or whether
It,
they experience it or not, or if they do, then they win. Like that's all good for them. But I try to articulate or extract what's actually happening
mhm.
in those moments, or what are the symptoms that contribute to that moment happening. And one of them, without question, is you're able to turn off your conscious brain, so you're not thinking of anything else in the moment. It's taking you. You don't have to decide and do something. You just let it happen to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's so well said because it's very interesting because I've been thinking about the same thing. Why this sort of sensation occurs. What it's
Yeah, yeah.
based on,
Right.
and I'm always thinking whether it's the fact that we simultaneously experience pure, genuine happiness
Yeah,
and pure and genuine satisfaction of us being able to just you know um, represent ourselves, to
yeah,
just be ourselves and showcase it
yeah,
externally.
yeah.
And I guess it's a combination of many different feelings, but I guess it's very unique because have you experienced this emotion, this sensation again?
Yes.
Oh,
Um,
really?
playing, playing. Okay, the occasions that I've experienced it
Hmm.
are playing live.
Hmm.
Not every time, but certainly, like the show we did a showcase. Funny enough, at Metro, same venue, when Roadrunner came to see us, and we got signed from that show, and it was great. It was a sold out show, so what, 1,200 people in there or something. And again, everybody was sort of, you know, there's a part where everybody's sort of jumping in unison,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like the whole room again. uh, That's when it's sort of amplified. That feeling is amplified when it's sort of shared with more people, which is why I love concerts so much, because
Yeah.
if everybody's in the same headspace, I mean, that's a trip. It's like an exponential experience of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah. Would you say, you know, your fascination with music comes from your satisfaction with music comes from the fact that you're able to express yourself, or from emotionally connecting with other people as well doing that?
Emotionally connecting with other people, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, expressing myself that doesn't hit, like, that doesn't really resonate, but I feel like,
Yeah.
I guess that's what's happening.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? But it's not like I've never looked at it like, I need to show everybody who or what I am. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
more like I need to find my tribe,
Mhm.
not like a tribe I'm a leader of, but I need to find the the people who coalesce, with whom spirits we coalesce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I just love being part of a collective of like-minded, adventurous, creative thinkers.
Mhm. It's it just makes all the sense, honestly. And I guess this is a very good transition to where I wanted to lead next. Obviously, you've mentioned the concert where you got signed from Roadrunner, and so on and so forth. Um, considering the fact that, obviously you've created the band and, you decided that you want to do that, I guess getting signed was something completely life changing for you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it is like the most evasive thing that Nathan I've ever gone after. It's
Hmm.
so. I'm sorry. I mean, it was one of the worst, most difficult pursuits
Wow.
ever. I mean, we did probably 15 showcases for labels,
Wow.
got passed on every time. And prior to Medina Lake, we had we had a band called Blank Theory.
Mhm.
Thankfully, we were not very good. Thankfully, but it took forever for that band, and we actually got signed. But it was one of those like bittersweet things because it was an upstart label. It was New Line Cinemas decided to start a record label back, in the 2000s when the industry was making so much money that you know every every entertainment company was like, all right, let's do a record label.
Yeah.
So there was like zero staff. We got signed and dropped in about 6 months.
Oh.
So then we're on the other side of a band getting signed. So who's going to be interested in you? Your old news. Now you're like, now you're spit out on the other side of this. Your pursuit, your dream.
Mhm.
We knew that band wasn't the one, but
Yeah.
still, you, it's such a crapshoot to be in this industry. It wasn't until there's actually a lesson in this. It wasn't until we stopped trying so hard to get signed that we found Mateo and Dan, the G
Mhm.
Wizbot,
Mhm.
um, and we started writing together. That was another time writing with those two.
Everything clicked.
I mean, the first session we wrote "Now or Never" um, and "Adelia"
Mhm.
from our first record. Like the first time we ever played in a room together, and it felt so nice. Their band, they were in a band called Reforma. They were trying to get signed, and they were getting passed on like crazy, which was
Wow.
great, because Nathan and I were so nervous that they were going to get signed. We're like, they did a showcase for Virgin, and we were like, oh my God, please blow it, please blow it. And they did.
Hey, it
So
all happened for a reason.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So yeah,
Uh,
when we did Medina Lake, it was great. We were just like, all right, we don't have to write a hit single. We don't have to do whatever we want,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what came out. And there was no resistance. It was like, we did Roadrunner wanted to see us. We did a showcase for them, and then like 9 other labels called and
Wow.
wanted us to do showcases for them, and we did. I was, I'm sort of like the manager of the band. You
Yeah.
know, I handle the business stuff,
Yeah.
and I was like, I passed on it. I was like, that's okay. These guys want us. Like they were here first. You just want us because they want us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So we just did the deal quickly, and we were in LA making a record. A few months later, it was awesome.
Wow. I think it's very important for, especially when it comes to people in music and people in entertainment and art in general, to understand what you've just described. That if you're too concentrated on the result and you are just so focused on just attaining that, the chances that you will achieve it are quite
Yeah,
low.
yeah,
You just have to, I guess everything needs to be natural and genuine for it to
that's it. Yeah,
properly happen. Yeah.
yeah. Because again, it's that flow. It's like that chi that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Um, you whatever there's a myriad of different things you can call it, but when you're in the zone, when you're in the flow, when you're just letting things happen to you, and I don't mean just sitting sitting on the sidelines waiting. I mean, work hard and become an expert at your craft. Invest the hours and get uncomfortable and get, it's going to be painful, but you let these things happen naturally. And when they happen with no resistance, that's the one you need.
Yeah, it's all about the natural synergy, as we've been mentioning quite a few times now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know that's another story that just proves this point, which I'm always very happy to just experience.
Yeah.
So based on everything you said, obviously, we all know about your music career and everything you've achieved, but I'm really curious to hear about your motivations when it comes to the idea of starting your charitable activity as well, because I think this is an aspect that indicates a lot about you as a person and a lot about you when it comes to your, vision in terms of life and so on.
Thank you. So after uh, what happened, I was, for anyone who probably doesn't know, we were at home writing our third record in Chicago.
Mhm.
I was leaving a writing session and I heard a woman screaming for help. I ran and intervened in the process, and I managed to rescue her. But the assailant, the guy who was strangling her, he was strangling her, and he was punching her, and she was just covered in blood and incapacitated by the time
Wow.
that I reached her. It was late at night, nobody was around. He managed to pick up a rock, and while I was distracted, I was holding her up, and I'm not a very tall character in real life. So
I relate to that. Yeah.
the 5'6"ers.
Short kings.
Yeah, like I was it was a well placed kick that like I was running full speed and like sideways with my legs out, and I got him in the ribs. That's how I was able to at least subdue him from that. But he cracked my skull open with a rock, and so when I woke up, I came up uh, from the coma 7 days later. I was so overwhelmed by the love that was sent my way, up into the ether and down into my hospital bed.
Yeah.
Nathan and I were just so overwhelmed with that. Smashing Pumpkins did a benefit show for me at the Metro. Venue's coming up again. You can tell it's a very special place in my heart.
Yeah.
And Billy Corgan, he's he was an idol of mine. If I could say I've ever had an idol, I mean, he would be the closest thing.
Yeah.
And he even like took my recovery under his wing. He flew us to Arizona, Nathan and I both, to stay in a cabin with him while he was doing some writing and recording, and it was just the most surreal experience ever.
Wow.
I mean, he brought in Reiki healers, sweat lodges, like these gurus. I mean, it was incredible, and it took me a year to recover from that mentally and physically. And I was stuck at a certain level until all of that really turned a corner. So, anyways, we were so overwhelmed with that we, in the wake of it, we decided to devote our lives to giving back. So we launched 501c3 Charity Bomb, and we produce benefit shows to raise money for a variety of causes.
Mm-hmm.
We've migrated to the mental health space, particularly preventative mental health for children, teaching them the tenets of EQ to fortify their emotions, instill confidence, help kids be strong and independent, and emotionally resilient. And that's because that started when we both had our kids. So Nathan's son is Atlas, and my man is Vincent, and he is the center of my universe. I mean, you talk about experiencing a love that you couldn't even imagine exists on the planet. when you have a kid, that's it. That's it. That that's that's godliness to me.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how we've wound up at this in this career path and at this destination.
Wow. Wow. That's a story, and it seems you've been through so much in terms of intensity and experiences and emotions and whatnot. And I'd love to explore the different things that you've mentioned in a more in-depth manner, but obviously our meeting's approaching its end, so I'll try to summarize my interests in a
Yeah,
question or two.
awesome.
Um, Based on everything that you've mentioned and all the different experiences that you referred, what would you say you know, are the most valuable lessons that you came to based on everything that we've been talking about? And what do you think is something that you would like people to understand in terms of life concepts and thoughts and perceptions? What would you like to imply to people's minds if you could?
Good one. I would say I'm a big proponent of stepping out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like such a simple thing, but it's not. And if you consider every time you know you engage in a behavior that is seemingly benign, but like say binge watching a show on
Mm-hmm.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Anything of course in moderation is fine, but
Mm-hmm.
when your urges are telling you, oh, just do another one, and you succumb to it, that's the moment that I would advise you stop. Like you force yourself to do the thing that's uncomfortable, to do something positive for yourself and for your brain. Independent critical thinking is everything. Also, don't be afraid to stand against the crowd. If the whole mob is saying one thing, don't go along to get along if you don't agree with what they're portending.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't be afraid to be to be ridiculed and berated, as long as your intentions are pure, um, and benevolent, and if you have a good spirit, you have to do that. That you have to go that way. You have to be true. You have to be true to yourself, and that's the other thing I would say of honesty is with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Lying, or even by omission, or any sort of dishonesty,
Mm-hmm.
is going to come back to get you. So if you always are honest, with yourself and true to yourself, then then you're good, and it will just bring everything. It'll bring the good things in your life, and it will keep the bad at bay.
That's so well said. And, I've been smiling through what you've been saying because your words are coming exactly in the right time for me personally.
Oh, terrific!
Because, I've been in this situation where I'm in a dilemma between obviously the options. And I've been stuck in terms of assessing whether I'm, more leaning towards the one because it's more comfortable than the others, and whether I'm
Yeah,
afraid to jump in the unknown.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and I've been literally battling that while binge watching shows on Netflix.
Yeah.
So literally,
Totally, I know.
this touched me so well.
Oh, that's awesome. Again, I guess
Yeah.
take that as a sign.
Yeah, I mean, I literally needed, this sort of a sign in terms of
Yeah.
what to do, and everything that you
Awesome.
mentioned just came at the right time. Which,
Oh man, I hope it works out.
I need to thank you for it. I guess.
We'll see.
Yeah, hopefully, but it's certainly words to go by. and I honestly can't support them anymore. So yeah, thank you so much for all of this. Thank you so much for opening and sharing such personal and meaningful experiences. I
Right.
genuinely appreciate that award, and honestly, hopefully hopefully we'll be able to to continue this conversation at a later point, because I'm so fascinated to learn more about your way of thinking and just your perception of so many different things. Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I would love to do that.
It would be a pleasure. I mean, great questions.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure, as it is in the short time we've known each other. Every conversation, I've enjoyed it. So good luck to you with all your endeavors, and we'll stay connected.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank
have a
you so
great
much.
day.
You too.